What's up, guys? So the most common rule for determining the right retirement fund size was just changed. And that changes everything for our target retirement funds, and here's how. The 4% rule has been the de facto standard for figuring out the right retirement fund size for many, many years. Bill Bengen came up with this approach, analyzing the historical stock market performance and determining that if you were to retire in one of these worst periods, withdrawing 4% from your retirement fund would basically keep you funded for life without ever reducing your principal. But he just recently changed that advice. He's bumped it from 4% to a whopping 5%. Yeah, I know it's not really actually all that big, but the other interesting piece of information that he put in there is he reiterated that the average return over all of the years he's analyzed has been 7%, and he's continuing to withdraw from his retirement fund now at 5%. So all of these videos and articles saying the 4% rule, you gotta rename them all now. But here's what this actually means for us in practical terms. So I'm gonna take you through my retirement numbers. So I've mentioned on videos before, my family needs about $180,000 a year pre-tax in order to sustain our current level of living, which that's the goal with retirement, right? To sustain your living. So if you take $180,000, the simple way to get to your retirement portfolio target value is to just divide that number by what used to be 4%. So we're going to divide it by 0.04 to get 4%, and that's going to result in a number of 4.5 million, which is a massive retirement fund. But he just updated that to 5%. So let's go ahead and run the numbers for 5%. $180,000 divided by 5%, and now we get $3.6 million, which is a difference of $900,000 that I no longer have to save before I'm financially independent. And that's awesome, but we all know that I'm a fairly risk-tolerant person here, so let's go ahead and, for the fun of it, analyze the 7% numbers and see what that looks like stacked up against the historical returns of withdrawing 5% on a $3.6 million account. Now seems like a good time to throw in that little disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. This is just what I'm doing, so take this for entertainment purposes, and let's jump into the numbers. So if we took the same thinking that we applied with the 4% and 5% rule and applied it to the 7% rule, we would end up getting a number of about $2.5 million at a 7% withdrawal rate over time to sustain my $180,000 a year pre-tax expenses. So now that's $2 million less than the 4% that I was originally targeting that I now either don't have to save or that I can put to work in other ways. But let's be safe about this, right? Let's look at the historical returns of what a 5% portfolio looks like and what a 7% portfolio looks like against the historical returns of the S&P 500 since 1986. So first we'll take a look at the graph starting at $3.6 million going back to 1986 against the S&P historical returns. The link is in the description to a list of those returns. A link is also in the description of the spreadsheet that I used here to generate this graph. If you want to play around with the numbers, anything like that, you can make a copy of it. So you'll see withdrawing annually 5% and factoring in the growth or the loss of the market in the previous year. You'll see that most of the lines stay relatively positive, very few dip into the negative, but in the end, regardless of what year you started in, you're gonna be safe. You're gonna keep your money. You're not ever gonna run out of money in retirement. So now let's look at the 7% withdrawal starting at a $2.5 million balance. And you'll see it's actually not that different. Yes, it declines a bit more than the other depending on the years that you start in, but the goal here is just to not run out of money, right? The goal here is to relatively maintain that original principal balance of $2.5 million, and this seems to do that. I was actually really astonished. I thought this was going to be significantly worse going all the way back to 1986. I'm curious, maybe I will run this numbers for even older data if I can find it, but this seems to do the trick. So that was honestly really surprising, and I think going forward I will probably be sticking with the 7% rule. But as always, taking your risk tolerance level into account. For me, I'm a very risk tolerant person. I'd rather be putting that money to work in other places and getting to financial independence sooner rather than later. Because when I retire, quote unquote, retire, I don't plan to stop working. I continue to plan to be building businesses and releasing things on YouTube and all of these other things that are hopefully going to be bringing in revenue and things like that. So that's my plan. Just remember to get to these numbers, just take your annual pre-tax expenses and divide it by whatever number makes sense to you, the 4%, 5%, 7%, 3.2%, 3.1%, 25%, whatever makes sense for you. And if this video was useful or you know someone that this video would be useful for, please share it with them, like, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.